Good evening. This is going to be a little bit different than things have been done before, partly because we're using new technology so that I can show a lot of pictures and work with the diagrams and tables and things like that. That'll be a big change. And the other part of it is that we're going to have somebody giving a guest presentation tonight. So be ready to look at a lot of things. This is going to be in two parts. The first part is going to be me describing a lot of things that are in the second part. Rick is one of these people that has a great deal of knowledge, and he didn't know how much the students in this class know. I don't even know that. Neither of us really know. So we have to do something to make certain that the people who are not familiar with this information do get some understanding of it. Now, Rick is a very well-studied and a very practical or practiced astrologer. He has studied things and has found the timing of things, and he's been quite accurate with a lot of things. There's something you have to remember, that when you have somebody like Rick, he can do things with alacrity and ease. He can spin out things that because he's familiar with them. And other people are not so familiar, so a lot of things might just go right past you. It's all right to stop the video to look at things. It's all right to back up and replay. It's perfect to go through the video a couple times to get as much as you can out of it. Now, there are a couple of things that I'd like to say about this. The first one is, don't panic. You're going to have some things tonight that are going to come by really fast. And there are going to be a lot of things that you're not really familiar with. But don't panic. And treat it as familiarization, if nothing else. Just that you're being introduced to something that you might someday be very familiar with. Now, all of the information that is in this talk tonight, or most of it that is in Rick's talk tonight, we will go into at some time or another. Some of the things we have gone into already. In some cases, I have presented things that I haven't given the formal words and language to, but we'll see that as things come along. Take heart that you can learn these things and that you can be familiar with them. So don't panic. Take encouragement. All right. It's all right to consider this presentation tonight as a lesson in humility. Even in trying to bring you up to speed with Rick, it has been a lesson in humility for me. Everything is going to be repeated if it's important. Now, this is something, I don't know how technical the people who are watching these videos want them to be. Please send feedback so that I know what you want. You have the address for the feedback, 99fots@gmail.com. So send your suggestions. If you find something that you think needs correction, please do that. All right. We're ready to begin this first part. The first part is a list of names, and the names are given in the order in which they appear in the in Rick's talk. He uses only one word name or one first name or last name. This is the complete name in the second column, and in the third column is when they appear in the video. I didn't take the time to get the exact minute and second for each of the for introductory times, but it should be enough. All right, let's go down the list. The first is Heindel. The full name is Max Heindel, and Max Heindel is a pen name. It is a pen name for a man who was both a mystic and an occultist, and he was active in the early 20th century. He is the founder of the Rosicrucian Fellowship, which is a non-profit organization of spiritual service to which both Rick and I have belonged. Now, Max Heindel did not practice primary directions, which is the subject of Rick's talk, but he knew about them, but did not have the time or the necessity to do them. And that in those days, doing primary directions was something you spent a lot of time with. All right, the next on the list is Claudius Ptolemy. Ptolemy is for short. He was born right near the very beginning of the 2nd century AD. He was a mathematician, an astronomer, and an astrologer. He wrote prolifically on all of these subjects. He has an excellent book on fixed stars, for example. And he also had esoteric writings, but not a lot is known of them. Ptolemy is considered the father of Western astrology, because all Western astrology follows after him. In the Middle Ages, Arabic astrology, which drew on Greek astrology, became an influence on Western astrology, but still most things go back to Ptolemy. The presentation that Rick is going to make is about the primary directions as used by Ptolemy. The next on the list, the third one down, is Placidus. And Placidus is short for Placidus de Titus. And he was a 17th century monk who taught math and physics, astronomy, and astrology. And what he did is he mathematically formalized the system of houses that was indicated by Ptolemy. And almost, I would say, the vast majority of astrology since Placidus uses his tables of houses. The next name on the list is Campanus. And it is Campanus of Novara. He was a 13th century mathematician, astronomer, and astrologer. For many of you, you may not know this, but Western astrology has a long history, and there are a lot of records that have been kept by Western astrologers, and you can see that mathematicians all along the lines developed ideas and insights into looking at the heavens. Campanus was the innovator of a system of dividing the mundane houses, and it is based on the prime vertical, which was something very new. We're going to touch on some of this as we go. The next name is Nabod. I don't know the pronunciation. This is Valentin Naboth, or Naboth. who was a 16th century mathematician, astronomer, and astrologer. And he was a specialist in calculating planetary motions. And he worked on getting timing to great accuracy. You're going to see that Rick has a great deal of respect for him in what he has done. The next one is Koch, is the way it is pronounced now, but that's incorrect. Rick, who is an expert and a teacher of German, pronounces it the correct way, as far as I know it, is Koch. And this is Walter Koch, who is a 20th century astrologer, a new kid on the block. And he was very popular for developing a house system. Again, a system for understanding the houses, how they are derived from the heavens. His is very popular, and the followers of the Koch system are almost fanatic about their about his method. It's based on regressing the midheaven back to when the midheaven was on the ascendant and dividing that arc into thirds. It's called a semi-arc, actually. The next two names are always connected together, and they are Fagan and Bradley. Cyril Fagan was born in Ireland, but ended up, I think he died in Tucson, Arizona. He was someone that was, again, extremely scrupulous about timing and getting things exact. He and Donald Bradley worked on systems of precessing the equinox. In fact, they tried to find the first degree of Aries because there's no spot in the heavens that is really the first degree of Aries, and they tried various locations to try to get an understanding with history. I think they eventually ended up with the first degree of Aries as being opposite Spica in Virgo, but I don't know if that is where they finally ended. I haven't kept up with what they have done. And so these are two mathematical astrologers, and when we come to things like solar returns, which we will eventually get to, their names will come up as being very important. And the last name is Williams. It is Robin Williams, the famous entertainer, the superb entertainer as an actor, as a comedian, in many, many ways, and a very good human being. The reason he is here is because toward the end of the talk by Rick, he's going to do something using primary arcs to look at the time of death of Robin Williams. All right. Now we're going to say just a very few words to familiarize you with things that you probably should know. This is what you could call the local sphere. It is dividing the heavens relative to where you are. Now it's a little bit tricky because it's hard to get the two things together. Normally, when you divide the local sphere, you divide it looking south. This one, you're dividing it looking at west. This circle right here, the red one in the center, that is the horizon. I don't know whether it's the sensible horizon or whether it is the theoretical horizon. This yellow is the ecliptic. That is the band of stars that the band of the heavens that all of the planets pass through. Now, there are two other circles, the outside circle and this one that you're sort of almost looking straight on. Each of them is different. The outside circle is as if you're looking south, because here's the south point. It says right here, it is the south point. That is the longitude of where you're at. That's the prime meridian is the meridian of longitude that passes straight overhead, passes through the zenith, going north and south. It's from the North Pole to the South Pole. That is the rotational pole, not the magnetic. The other is not the prime meridian. The other is the prime vertical. And the prime vertical also passes straight overhead and goes through the zenith, but it passes from east to west. And the prime vertical is the one that is divided in house systems. And you can see that between the horizon and the ecliptic, there are angles. Now those angles are going to come up, and especially since we're going to look at the celestial equator and its difference from the ecliptic and from the place of birth. These are things that are going to come up regularly. All right. All right. This is just to show you, this is the North Pole. You can see it goes through the north of the planet Earth. And it is the celestial North Pole. This is you see where it says here right near my marker, it's at 0, and that is on the celestial equator. And the way you can picture the celestial equator is if at some point right on the celestial equator there's a big pole, a straight pole that juts way out into space, and as the Earth turns on its axis, it makes a path through the stars, and that is the celestial equator. This, with the sun shining on it, is the vernal equinox, and that is an angle, on an angle of 23 degrees, 21 minutes, and 23 seconds. And where the two circles meet is called the vernal equinox. And when the sun is there, equinox means equal day, or equal night is what it actually means. And that's the first day of spring. And everything in astronomy and astrology, including sidereal time along the celestial equator, everything is measured relative to that vernal equinoctial point. But in the sphere of planets, the vernal equinox is always changing, very, very slow. If you live to be 72 years old, you see that the equinox has changed, and then the stars relative to the stars 1 degree. All right. Simple stuff. Everybody should know it. And please don't be insulted if I'm making this too simple. I just want to make sure that we get some of these things. This one is cut off a little bit because I don't have that much screen and I didn't have the time to shrink it down to size that I could get it all on. This is just to show the right ascension. Here's that point again where the celestial equator and the ecliptic meet. That is the vernal equinoctial point. And when you go around the celestial equator, the measurement is called right ascension. But it is not measured in degrees and minutes. It is measured in terms of hours, minutes, and seconds, and it goes down to easily 10,000th of a second if you look at something like the Nautical Almanac. So every 4 minutes, you know, 1 degree, what would be called 1 degree is 4 minutes on right ascension. Rick will tell you a lot about that. Now, this is a method of coordinates. Right ascension and declination is the set of coordinates that is used by all astronomy. It's not what is used by astrology. And it is different from celestial longitude and latitude. Celestial longitude and latitude are relative to the ecliptic, where, you know, how many degrees away from the equinox, that is the celestial longitude, and how far at right angles to the ecliptic is called celestial latitude. And now, celestial longitude and latitude are different than terrestrial longitude and latitude, which is also going to come up because Rick has something to say about it. So if you have any spot in the heavens, like the example that is given in the picture here is a star. If you want to give the coordinates for that star, you go along at right ascension until you're at a right angle to the star, and that is your right ascension. And this angle that encloses the green segment is called the declination. This example here is north declination. And it's about 50-some degrees north declination, I would guess. All right, we're going along very nicely here. The next thing we look at is oblique ascension. In this case, we're dealing with the horizon, as we did with the very first diagram we looked at, and we're seeing how a star is on the horizon. Now, when that star is on the horizon, it is that it can be seen from the equator and by right ascension and declination, and it can be seen on the ecliptic, where it is on the ecliptic, relative to the ecliptic, and the difference from the ecliptic to the star, we're talking about its oblique ascension. Rick is going to be very clear about how to find the oblique ascension, and for the kind of method that Rick is using, oblique ascension is very important. In fact, in all of the things where you're doing directions, and there are several different ways of doing directions, the oblique ascension becomes important. All right, now we shift into something different. Rick has been kind enough. This is a, come on. This goes along with the diagram we just looked at, and this is a definition of ascensional difference, the difference between right ascension and its oblique ascension, and that's a little gap that we looked at there, which becomes important because it determines how much in time that it takes to get from one point on the celestial sphere to another. But again, I hope you're taking screenshots of all of these. If not, go back over the video and take screenshots and look at them, and you'll come to a better understanding. Now, for all of the points on the zodiac, there are tables have been made for the ascensional arcs for the, and this is a sample of set of tables. Most likely, most of you will never use these at all. But we're talking about arcs, the angle of arcs for different parts for the oblique ascension. All right. Now, Rick has been kind enough to give me a set of lecture terms that he used in his talk. And this is the first page of them. A sidereal, ooh, my goodness. We lucked out. I dropped the mouse and it didn't break. The sidereal day is the time from when a point in the heavens is straight overhead until it's straight overhead again. But it's the same definition, but using a different set of words, and that's the time of time it takes the Earth to rotate on its axis. And Rick is going to give it to you. It's under 4 minutes because there is a difference between sidereal time and solar time. The reason is that the a solar day is 4 minutes longer, roughly speaking, than a sidereal day, because for the sun to be straight overhead until it comes straight overhead again, that takes longer than it does for a star to be straight overhead straight overhead again, because we have moved forward relative to the sun, whereas the star is at virtual infinity, so it's basically fixed in its position. Terrestrial latitude, he's going to talk about mundo aspects, and terrestrial latitude is how far you are north or south of the physical, the earthly equator. And primary direction, which is what this is going to be all about. The main idea of primary directions is to move radix points, radix means the natal horoscope, on the celestial sphere in the direction of their daily motion in ascension. So you're directing the points in time. Everything is done in time. Angular houses. This is something we have looked at many times from the very beginning of astrology classes. I think this is about the 5th level of classes that I've done, that the primary angles, that is the cusps of the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th, those are called primary angles. And they are at the midheaven, at the imum coli, which means the bottom of the heavens, descendant on the west horizon and ascendant on the east horizon. These are very important. They have a great deal of influence. And actually, the midheaven is, in almost any horoscope, is the most accurate point that there is, because it's just pointing straight south, and you don't have to worry about parallax. You don't have to worry about how you're geometrically looking at the heavens or whatever like that. It is you're just looking straight south, and you're sure to have accuracy, and that should be the same in any horoscope of any kind. In the various different kinds of houses, the ascendant, which is the first house cusp, is also is the second most accurate part in the horoscope. It happens to be one of those serendipitous things. The 4th is just the opposite of the midheaven, and the 7th is the opposite of the ascendant. All right. Okay. More terms from Rick. Topocentric house system. He's talking here about Argentinian astrologers coming up with something that we have talked about several times in several of the courses that we've done together. A topocentric means that the house system is based on the center of the Earth rather than on the geocentric. In the geocentric, you divide the houses as if you're in the center of the Earth. In its topocentric, you're dividing them as if you're on the surface of the Earth. All right? Tropical astrology means that you're using the tropical zodiac based on the first degree of Aries at the vernal equinox. And it divides the ecliptic up into 30 degrees relative to the vernal equinox. Sidereal astrology, or uses the sidereal zodiac, which is the same always. It doesn't change over the centuries, but we don't live it that way. If you try to plant your crops according to the sidereal zodiac, you're going to end up with no crops, because sometimes the first degree of Aries on the sidereal zodiac will be in the middle of winter, and you can't do things seasonal that way. So we're using the most universal horoscope, most universal zodiac is the tropical zodiac, and there's pretty much agreement about that. Sidereal, we will venture into some sidereal astrology because it's important for some things, but for now, we're just working with the tropical zodiac. Now, oblique ascension. Now, this is where you may want to double back in the in this video to see where we had a picture of oblique ascension, and it's talking about the ascensional difference. Like we have that table of the ascensional differences for the different signs of the zodiac, and we had the diagram of how oblique ascension is calculated. And it's a difference. It's necessary. What it does is it determines how long something is going to be above the heavens. Obviously, the sun in midsummer is in the heavens longer than it is in winter, and it is true for every planet that is above or below the celestial equator. And determining the oblique ascension is a means of determining how long it's going to be above the equator, and it is used in order to determine the change of position of the heavens relative to a fixed point on the heavens, which Rick will come to, and which we will look at many more times. Now, the next two terms are terms that Rick uses a lot, and you're going to run into them in many places. The significator and the promissor. Let's read through this very carefully. The significator is the planet or point which is held fixed in the celestial sphere. The promissor is the planet or point which moves with the celestial sphere as the celestial sphere rotates on its axis. In presenting rotation, the promissor always appears first and the significator second. So if you have a planet that is in a fixed location, meaning to say you did a horoscope and this planet was in this spot in the celestial sphere, then the whole celestial sphere is moving. And as things move toward or away from that significator, that is the promissor. a planet or a point in the heavens that is moving toward or away from a significator in the actual rotation is one that applies and gives energy to. All right, now we come to something very, very different, and we're just going to whip through this. It's just to give you a vague familiarization. I don't think that this material was even, I think Rick just picked this up off of the internet. And this is what we're going to look at is about how primary arcs or primary directions are calculated and how one planet relates to another in doing that. All right. The first frame that we have here is the most important. This is a quote from Rick. The math is so complex that I think it is easier just to teach them how to use the software, but I certainly understand if you want to give them a framework of understanding. There is stuff out there like this, which is relating to all the frames that are going to follow now. The software he's talking about, the most popular and almost universal, is called Marinus software. And Marinus software does all of the mathematics for you and puts things in nice tables, and you can pick out specific things. You can change all kinds of variables to get at what you're trying to get at. But I don't expect, it may be, or during all the years that I have had astrology students, and I have probably a few thousand of them out there, it's probably only a handful of them that ever went this deeply into the mathematics. All right. I separated these to make them easier to directions. Aspects to planets. In zodiacal directions, aspects are just points of the ecliptic. So we just found the corresponding point. Simple definition. We're trying, if you remember, in everything that we've ever done with astrology of any kind, we've always said that aspects are the most important part of astrology because aspects are the way things get done, and we're going to be looking at things getting done. All right. What we're trying to do, this is not, I don't think this is from Rick. This is just an example of what somebody has done. I got some notes here somewhere, which I've probably lost by now. And there we are. This is from an example from somebody trying to find a time when a certain astronomical event occurs. In this case, it is trying to find the when the moon will trine Venus. This is in a horoscope. In order to do the whole horoscope, it would take us several sessions to do it. Everything is done in time. Now, if you look at, it says HD right here, that means that is the hourly distance. The TH is the temporal hours. That is to say, the amount of time that it takes. This is the hourly distance. And it's trying to calculate the difference between these two hourly distances, and from that determine the temporal hours that's going to take to make the change. And this is what it does. It takes the difference here, and in order to get these things, there's quite a bit of mathematics just to get the numbers that are in the table here. And if you take the difference between the two of them at the rate that the moon is going, and that determines the number of temporal hours that it takes for the trine to be true. Now this bottom part here is where they have typed in on Marinus when this event is going to take place, and you can't, it's very hard to see it here, but right above where the cross mark is in here, that is this very close to the same thing that they got by calculation. I'm just going to breeze through these because they're so far advanced from what most people are doing or what we're doing at this time that they're almost nonsensical. All right. Here we have Venus trine to the moon in mundu directions. And here in mundu directions, it says they work just like zodiacal directions, but this time mundu means of the earth, and we're talking about, this is where the planetary latitude came in. So we don't move points on the ecliptic, but planets with their latitude. All right, and this is where he shows you how to set it up in the software to determine when the event is going to take place. And of course, then that has to be translated into calendar time. In this case, we have trying to make a different calculation when Venus is directed to become sextile to Mercury, and it's doing the same kind of thing. It's pointless to say a great deal about this, but it's just enough to familiarize you and to set you into a panic. I don't mean to panic. All right. And in this, with directions, you can use directed parallels just as well as you use directed longitudinal aspects. It's talking about here Mercury coming to a parallel of Jupiter, and the difference is made in declination and how long it's going to take before with the rotation of the Earth, where it's going to take for the Mercury to be parallel to Jupiter. Simple information. All right. This is the horoscope of Robin Williams. It's taken from AstroDynamics, the group in Switzerland that has a wonderful website where you can get all kinds of information and gazillions of horoscopes and things like that. I hope you have taken your screenshot, because now I'm going to move this up so that you can get the bottom part. I couldn't get it all. I couldn't shrink it down to get the whole business. Oh. No, below are the tables of aspects and such. I couldn't get it all. I couldn't shrink it and get it all on, and I didn't want to split it in half. All right, this is the horoscope that Rick is going to be working with. This is a much simpler, much clearer version of the same information. It doesn't have all the details of the aspects and all of that, but if you're studying astrology, if you have studied astrology long enough to have gotten to the point of doing things that we're doing in these series of presentations, you should be able to look at a horoscope and just see those things without having them pointed out to you with all kinds of lines which can be just distracting. I like a simple horoscope to look at and think without all sorts of distraction. All right, this has lasted longer than I thought it was. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's helpful for your understanding. And I hope you enjoy part 2, which I will be putting up right after I put this one up. Thank you very much.